First, we need to prepare all the apparatus needed to make sure our test becomes smooth and clear. Here, I'm using a container, weighing balance and also a soil sample. Next, an empty container was weighed and measured the mass by using weighing balance and recorded as M1. After that, the soil was placed into the container by using a spatula. Then the soil sample with a container was weighed and measured and recorded as M2. Please make sure our eyes are perpendicular to the scale. Then we need to place the container into the oven and leave it for overnight. After that, the container containing the drained soil was weighed and measured and recorded as M3. Again, our eye should be perpendicular to the scale. All the needed apparatus was prepared, and here I'm using weighing balance, 2 containers or 2 glass, a basin and a soil sample. Lastly, we need a jug of water. Next, we need to weigh and measure the empty glass by using weighing balance and recorded the data. Next, an empty basin also measured and recorded the data by using weighing balance. After that, one of an empty glass was filled with the soil sample by using a spatula. We need to make sure that there is no soil at the outside of the glass. The glass with the soil also should be weighed and record the data. Next, we take an empty glass and also a basin and put an empty glass at the middle of the basin, and then the empty glass was filled with water until it is full. Make sure there is no space in the glass. Then, the soil sample from the previous glass was then transferred into the glass with full of water. This needs to be done slowly to avoid air pores in the water. Then, the glass was taken out from the basin. This should be done slowly and carefully to avoid from the water spill into the basin. Next, weighing balance was prepared, and then the water displaced in the basin was weighed and recorded. Then step 3 until 5 were repeated to get an average data in order to get more precise results in this test. The soil sample should be exposed to the air for 1 day to get a dry soil. Spread the soil evenly to maximize the evaporation process. Then convert all the dry soil into a big container. Next, prepare all the apparatus needed, which is a container, weighing balance and also a ball level, which I symbolize it as a sieve apparatus in the lab. And lastly, the soil sample. Here the ball level that I have been used as the sieve apparatus in lab. Each of sieves were cleaned and weighed before they were being used by using a weighing balance and recorded the measure. Make sure all the sieves were clean and weighed, and lastly the pan at the bottom of the sieve also was weighed. Now the sieves were arranged according to the largest opening of sieve size at the top to the smallest at the bottom. Pan was placed below the smallest sieve. Make sure the clamp side of the sieve was clicked. Next, the dry soil was weighed. The initial mass of dry soil sample should be approximately 1 kg to 2 kg, and the data was recorded. Insert the dry soil into the sieving apparatus. Make sure there is no soil remain at the container. Close the sieve and click the clamp in order to make sure there is no soil will spill out while we shake manually. Then sieve was shaken manually for a few minutes.
A few minutes later.
Next, open the sieve gently and carefully in order to avoid from the soil inside spill out to the outside. Next, weight of each sieve with its retained soil was weighed carefully and the data was recorded. Repeat these steps to the another size of sieve. The weight of the bottom pan with its retained fine soil was recorded as well. All the apparatus needed were prepared, which are weighing balance, a steel container marked 13 cm of height with marker, and lastly we need a hammer to dig the steel container. The diameter of the steel container was measured. Next, choose the best place to do the test. Then, the surface of the tested area was cleared and make sure it is flat before being tested. Then, steel container was placed on the surface. A hammer was used to make sure the dig process was easily.
A few minutes later.
Make sure the soil was reached the calibration mark like this. Then soil around the steel container was excavated. Then steel container filled with fill soil was taken out. After that, the steel container was weighed and the data was recorded. The fill soil was then extracted to an empty container and then it was put in the oven for overnight. Then, the weight was measured and the moisture content was calculated. As usual, before we start the test, all the apparatus needed were prepared. Here, I am using a compactor. A bottle with the holes at the bottom and calibration mark which are H1 and H2. A basin. A soil sample. And lastly, a jug of water. Next, we fill the bottle with the soil sample until it reaches the calibration mark for the soil sample. Then the soil was compacted by a compactor. This may take some time to make it fully compacted.
A few minutes later.
Then the water was poured into the bottle until it is full in order to let the soil fully saturated. It also makes some time to release all the water in the bottle. After that, the water was added until the level above from point H1. Make sure starts the clock watch once it starts at level H1. Once the water level reached H2, stopwatch was stopped, the time was recorded.